Salutations and felicitations to everyone. Welcome to Reason, Deism, and God from the World Union of Deists. I'm your host, Tim Wingate, and today we're going to be talking about the Declaration of Sinlessness. We're going to do a series on the 11 reasons for the Declaration of Sinlessness. Now, a little while ago, somebody once asked me, how come you have 11 reasons? And I simply responded, kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference toward Spinal Tap, in that, 11 is one more than better than 10. Well,
this is a top to what we use on stage, but it's very, very special because if you can see, the numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board. 11, 11,
and most of
11,
the amps go up to 10.
Exactly.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it? It's not 10.
11 reasons. Well, one more better than the 10 commandments. How's that? So we're going to be moving toward that direction and deal with the issue of what is sin. Where does sin come from? Does sin really exist? We're going to start off with what is sometimes called the introduction or the preamble, but that in and of itself has a lot of meaning. Now, you'll notice in some respects that this declaration is patterned after the Declaration of Independence in some respects. Not all, not completely, but the general flavor of it. That is, give a reason for why you're making the declaration. Make your declaration, and then make your conclusion. So we're going to start off with the introductory paragraph, or the preamble. Here it goes. When in the lives of human persons it becomes necessary for people to unbind the religious traditions and superstitions which have bound them with others, and to assert the rights and reason to which nature's God and nature's law entitle them, a natural consideration of the opinions of others suggests that they should declare the reasoning which compels them to the unbinding. When a long history of abuses shows a design to bind people under arbitrary, capricious, and unnatural laws, it is their right. It is their duty to throw off such superstitions and provide reason-based guides for their future well-being. The history of man-made, revealed, superstitious religions is a history of violent, personal, and social injuries, all evincing the establishment of absolute control through fear and the promises of present and eternal punishments and rewards over those persons. There you have it. I'm sure those of you who are familiar with the Declaration of Independence will recognize a similar concept, a similar way of organizing. So we're going to go through this just a little bit, just to reestablish what was said, and say it in another way, maybe a little bit easier for some others to understand. What it basically comes down to is that over a long period of time, when people have started to recognize that the religious traditions and superstitions that have bound them together have become unwieldy, have become burdensome, they have a right to reconsider those so-called beliefs. Now, the reason we use the idea of unbinding and the concept of being bound and unbinding is because the word religion itself means regarding legion or legion, refers to the bindings of the Roman soldier sandals, because the word is a Latin base. And the word meaning literally means that which binds, or the tie, that binds, or the binding that binds, the shoelace that ties. It's all the same concept. It's something that ties you up, binds you up. And so we as human persons, when we find that the religious traditions and superstitions are unnecessarily binding us and limiting our rights and limiting reason, and these rights and reasons are what nature's God and nature's law entitle us to, well, we have a right to assert ourselves and unbind ourselves from these things. But having a consideration for our friends, consideration for our family, consideration for our society as a whole, what we want to do is give them reason as to why we're saying no more. I no longer believe this way. I believe differently. I no longer believe that I am a sinful creature that was fraught with original sin from the moment of my conception due to nothing that I did by commission or omission. I reject that premise completely. Therefore, I am not bound anymore to any of the obligations that religion, tradition, and superstition are trying to place on me. And then going into the next part is that the history has shown us that man-made revealed superstitious religions, and this is a very important point. Throughout our talks and as we develop these concepts, you will hear me often use the phrase superstitious supernaturalism. Superstitious supernaturalism is basically what most revealed religions are. Most revealed religions are based on the belief that somebody had a special encounter with an entity that is above nature, supernature. You know, in writing and in semantics, in writing specifically, in our lettering, in our words, our text, you have what is called supertext. And the supertext is the text that goes above the center line. You have the undertext, which goes below the underline. So super means just something that's above what is considered the normal or the mid-range. So when we say supernatural or supernatural, all that means is it is something that seems to be above nature, above and out of the ordinary for what we understand nature to be. It doesn't mean it's not nature. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's magic. It just simply means it's something we don't understand completely at this point in time. It's super or above nature. But the term supernatural has taken on a whole new meaning in many areas, and that simply is that it doesn't necessarily respond to its root. It implies that there is magic or something mystical going on. So when we say supernaturalism, we're talking about people who believe that they have had some kind of above or out of the ordinary experience with something or somebody, and this something or somebody gave them special knowledge. It was revealed to them special truth that they are responsible to tell everybody else. And you can find that. The Bible is considered to be inspired by revelation. Joseph Smith supposedly saw entities in the woods up in upper New York when he was a young man trying to seek the truth of which religion was real, and he got special knowledge supposedly. Everybody else special knowledges, whether it's Muhammad in the back of a cave or anybody else who received special knowledge from something from beyond. That's basically what supernaturalism is. When you couple it with superstition, this is where it gets that kind of a magical element. Superstition is made up of what is often called magical thinking. Magical thinking is something that, a kind of thinking that ignores normal, natural cause and effect. It is as if A equals B and B equals C, then C could equal Z because they rhyme. Well, no, not necessarily. Magical thinking also attributes usually a supernatural element or a mystical element to a cause and effect situation. So, the old saying, step on a crack and break your mother's back. Well, that's a superstition. You can step on all the cracks you want, your mother's back probably won't be broken. But it's the same reasoning behind tossing salt over your shoulder if you spill salt, or saying God bless you when you sneeze, or Gesundheit, or any other thing. It's a superstition also incorporates a ritualistic behavior for something that may or may not stop something from happening. It's like the old people who believe in the evil eye. And they will have certain hand signals that they'll use to ward off the evil eye. This is why people sometimes, wear different tokens and symbols, and sometimes they paint their barns with different things so that it'll keep the evil spirits away, that kind of thing. So that's superstition and supernaturalism combined together give us basically what we have today as revealed religion. All revealed religion is basically built on superstitious supernaturalism. And most revealed religions also, especially the big three that claim to be monotheistic, believing in one God as opposed to multiple gods, which would be polytheistic, which we'll get into later as we incorporate these ideas into lectures further down the road here. Most of these religions show a pattern and a practice of trying to establish absolute control over their adherents, over the people that join them, their followers. They want absolute control. And how do they do that? Primarily through fear. Fear, intimidation, threat, coercion, and trauma. They will scare, and I suppose that maybe they mean it literally. I mean it more euphemistically in our common lingo. But they will scare the hell out of a little kid, so that kid will not even consider going outside of the realm of the behavioral mandates of that particular group of people for fear of literally going to a hell of some sort. Now, we will deal with the concept of hell later on as well, hell and heaven. Suffice it to say, within our preamble here, as we said, that religions, these superstitious, supernaturalist organizations or belief systems, are showing forth, are evidencing an establishment of absolute control through fear and the promise, and we already alluded to this, the promise of present and eternal punishments. As we mentioned, hellfire or outer darkness, whatever it is, it's going to be terrible, weeping and gnashing of teeth, or you're totally alone and isolated in the dark with things prodding you. We don't know, but whatever it is, it's bad and you don't want it to happen. Or, On the other hand, if you do what we say the way we tell you to do it, and you give up of yourself and your property and everything else for the sake of our belief system, you'll get a reward. You'll get to live in a beautiful mansion with streets of gold out front. Of course, I always wondered, what was the benefit of having streets of gold and living in huge mansions and pearly gates and jewels and all? I mean, all of a sudden, if this stuff was common, then would it really be worth anything then? I mean, what's the point? If everybody's got it, why is it valuable then? But that's another story, dealing with the biblical stuff as far as that goes. There's always a reward of some sort. Now, you can take a look at the different variations of Christianity and the offshoots of Christianity, and they will always have some form of a heaven or an eternal place, a paradise, or you go to what I like to call space Christianity, or Star Trek Christianity, and that's the Mormons, where they, you're going to be a god, and your wife will be your goddess, and then you're going to procreate a bunch of little god children to populate planets. You'll get your own solar system, and you get to be the god of your own solar system, doing to them what supposedly God the Father did to us here, this kind of thing. So you got this promise of eternal reward and eternal life and living as a god on another planet somewhere else. Every religion, every one of these theistic religions has the same pattern and practice, and that is they scare the crap out of you to make you to obey, and then they also offer the carrot. The scaring's the stick, and then they offer you the carrot, the bribe, the incentive. You don't want to go to hell. I will, my God bless my mother, but she will, she often has lamented that she's so afraid her children won't be with her in heaven. And the fact is, I'm not sure there's a heaven to go to, but, the fact, the fear enters into the risk of losing the reward. And that's the whole part of this, that what we want to emphasize at the very beginning here is that religion over time, over history, man-made, revealed, superstitious, supernaturalist religions has a history of violent, personal, and social injuries. They hurt you physically, they hurt you mentally. And part of the mind are our emotions. Our emotions maybe in some ways are in the middle. You got the physical, the emotional, and the mental, the intellectual. Because everyone knows when you're depressed, you hurt. There's physical pain with emotional distress. And that's one of the things that religion does, is it plays upon emotion. It plays upon people's fears and desires. And that is the history. All you have to do, in fact, I challenge you right now to just Google these words, the Jesus Wars. And you will find a wonderful book, that outlines the battle in the Mediterranean. It's about a 700-year war, and it started I think around the 100s to 200s. And it was a battle between three different branches of what was then called Christianity. Three different branches of people who had different ideas as to what kind of entity Jesus was, whether he was all God, all man, or something in between. And they literally battled it out amongst themselves, killing, torturing, murdering one another, until finally one of the groups won, pretty much the middle one, and became what is now called Orthodox. Well, I don't mean the Orthodox Church where they wear the black robes and have the big beards and the bit. I don't mean that kind of orthodoxy. The word orthodox basically means that which is established. Well, the winners get to write the history sometimes, and they became the official thing. Well, these battles went on for years, literally 700 years or so, and they're still not technically over, but one group did primarily win, at least in the West, at least in Western Europe. And as Western Europe expanded further west, then, of course, crossed. But not all Christians still believe the same. And the evidence of the horror and the trauma that is attached to superstitious supernaturalism is there simply in the history of the early Christian church. And I'm not even talking about the Muslim expansion. I'm not even talking about some of the more, ritualistic or pushy Hindu groups. And there's other religious groups that have been just as violent as the Christians, just as violent as the Muslims. So I'm not just picking on Christians. I'm picking on specifically superstitious supernaturalism that is based, or that creates revealed religious or revealed texts that are considered holy and perfect and must be obeyed under penalty of pain, suffering, and death. And that is what we are saying no. No more. We don't subscribe to this. We refuse to go along with this. It is not reasonable. It is not provable. You cannot prove, any of these groups cannot prove that their holy revelations are actually true. There is no evidentiary chain of possession from the originals, the supposed original documents, to the variations that they have today. There is no way to prove that any of these things are absolutely true, the supernatural, superstitious belief systems. So because of that, therefore, I had an old teacher once told me, when you see a therefore, see why it's there for. Well, therefore, we are making a declaration that there is no such thing as sin. Because all these groups base the concept of sin on their revelations. And if their revelations don't exist, and their laws, their religious laws don't exist, then the breaking of their religious laws, which is what sin is considered to be, sin is basically a transgression of the law. It says that in the Bible. And other groups, you break one of their rules, it's considered a sin. It's very easy to find it in most of their documents. So therefore, we are saying there is no sin. And we are making the declaration that we are sinless, at least according to revealed religious beliefs. All right. Thank you all for listening for the first part of Reason, Deism, and God, and our study and our ongoing little thing here, discussion on the Declaration of Sinlessness. We'll be back again dealing with some of the reasons, the 11 reasons that we give for why we are sinless. Thanks for listening. Click any responses, any questions. We'll be happy to answer that at the bottom of the page there. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and pass them on, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks again for listening. This is Tim Wingate for the World Union of Deists, signing off.